What's bizarre is she's trying to frame herself as Miss Black Lives Matter, when in reality, Kamala Harris was the queen of mass incarceration.
Kevin Cooper was hours away from receiving lethal injection. Hours away from it. His lawyers asked that DNA evidence be acquired in order to make sure he was actually guilty of the crime. And Kamala Harris's office tried to prevent DNA evidence from being acquired. They wanted Kevin Cooper to be executed, but the governor of California disagreed. They acquired DNA evidence, and the execution was stopped. The New York Times tells us that she feels really bad about it, for whatever that means. And people can also recall that while she was head of the California State Attorney General's office, over 1,000 people were locked up for smoking marijuana. She presided over jailing a lot of people. And on top of that, the drug labs in the state of California that were being used by the police were turning up false positive results. And yet, Kamala Harris's office did not tell the defense attorneys or the judges about this. They knew that the drug labs were turning over false positives, and people went to prison because her office concealed that their drug labs were turning up false positives. And another thing about Kamala Harris, I don't know if people saw, but there's a video of Kamala Harris where she's bragging about how she jailed the parents of children who were truant from school.
I would not be standing here were it not for the education I received. And I know many of us will say the same thing. And I believe a child going without an education is tantamount to a crime. So I decided I was going to start prosecuting parents for truancy. Well, this was a little controversial in San Francisco. And frankly, my staff went bananas. They were very concerned because we didn't know at the time whether I was going to have an opponent in my re-election race. But I said, look, I'm done. This is a serious issue, and I've got a little political capital, and I'm going to spend some of it.
Have you seen the clip? And she gets up there, and it's the same kind of thing. She's giggling. Yes, I had the idea that we could lock up parents who are truant from school. You know, I wouldn't be anywhere in my life if it weren't for my education, and so not giving a child their education is a crime, and so I jailed parents, and she's giggling about it. It's just so great. And, you know, I see so much in U.S. media. They like to trivialize incarceration. There's so many shows on Netflix and all of that where it ends towards the end where someone goes to jail, but it's part of the happy ending. It's okay. And they don't seem to realize what that means. You know, when one member of a family, when a father or a mother goes to prison, or a brother or a sister, it hurts the entire family. And when Kamala Harris is up there giggling about, I locked up these parents because their kids weren't in school. Yeah, kids need to be in school. If kids aren't getting to school, it's a problem. But the worst thing you could do is then throw their parents in jail. That's not going to help the situation in any conceivable way. But when she's joking about it, and she's laughing about it, Kamala Harris, she says, what did she say? She said, well, I wouldn't be anywhere if it wasn't for my education. It's about her. The big line when she was calling out Joe Biden, when she was trying to contend with Joe Biden in the presidential election, what did she shout at Joe Biden? She shouted, "That little girl was me!"
You know, there was a little girl in California who was part of the second class to integrate her public schools. And she was bused to school every day. And that little girl was me.
And then her campaign started churning out T-shirts with the face of 10-year-old Kamala Harris on them. Do you remember this? Yes. It's almost like she wants us to vote for her because she was once a 10-year-old child. I mean, that's what it sounds like. What's particularly interesting is, you remember when Barack Obama was running for president. We knew everything about Barack Obama. We knew all about Barack Obama's pastor. We knew about Barack Obama's father from Kenya. We knew the school he went to in Indonesia. But Kamala Harris, barely anybody knows anything about Kamala Harris. Well, Kamala Harris's mother, who's now deceased, was from India, was a cancer researcher. And Kamala Harris's father, Donald Harris, was a Marxist economist, and is a Marxist economist, a professor at Stanford University. He was an advisor to the government of Michael Manley in Jamaica. And he and Kamala are estranged from one another. He did not attend Kamala's inauguration as vice president. They're not on good speaking terms. But the more you look at it, it's very clear that Kamala Harris sees herself as a victim. The way Kamala Harris speaks, the world has been unfair to her. And she blames Donald Harris for that to some degree or other. We don't know why. We also, there's rumors, we don't really know what happened when she was in Quebec. We just know she never talks about the years that she spent in Quebec. But Kamala Harris thinks that she is a victim. And she wants the whole world to know that that little girl was her. And she wants vengeance. And she wants to make people pay. And she wanted to make Kevin Cooper pay. And she wanted to make those parents pay. That's what leftism is if it's stripped of economics. If it's stripped of class struggle, if it's stripped of a desire to have the people rise up and control the means of production, if it's just anger, if it's just revenge, it's just a call for destruction, a call for rebellion, that's what Kamala Harris is. Kamala Harris, she's very much a guillotine meme. That's what she is. It's the glorification of punishment, a desire for revenge, a desire for destruction. And that if you look at the history of socialism around the world, the strength of socialism wasn't the guillotines, it wasn't the firing squads, it wasn't the persecution. That's not what people remember the strength of socialism being. They just did a poll. 75% of Russians say that the Soviet Union was the best time in their history, but they're not thinking that because of executions. This was from a PBS documentary. They interviewed a woman named Tatiana Fedorova.
Stalin set a task. Build this or build that. And thanks to the fact that people trusted him and this enthusiasm of young people, it was possible. Remember, this was a country where people were illiterate, lived in virtual darkness, wore birch bark shoes. Even now, I think it's like something out of a fairy tale. How was it possible at one of the most difficult times to raise these great construction sites? It was only possible through the unity of the people and the love of the people for their idol.
And the reason Stalin remains wildly popular in Russia, it's not because he executed people, it's because he mobilized them to build that country up from nothing. This was a country... He built some of the world's largest power plants, he wiped out illiteracy, and he built a modern industrial country. He raised millions of people up out of poverty. And then they fought off the Nazi invaders, and then they rebuilt the country again, and a few years later they were the first country in outer space. And the strength of socialism was not that it punished people and that it persecuted people, but rather that it enabled people to go out and build and construct. I've said to many people, I'm not a socialist because I want to destroy America. I'm a socialist because I want to save America. And we have to save America from the horrors that are being unfolded by an irrational system where profits come before people. I want to save America. I want to build a better world. If all the apparatus they've created for destroying people, for imprisoning people, for breaking people psychologically, could be utilized to build and to construct, if popular power were put in control of the means of production and control of the state apparatus of the United States, we could build something very, very beautiful.
They want you to be mad at Russia and China instead of the looters that are sitting not very far from here off Wall Street, who are actively getting bailouts in the billions, arguably even in the trillions, for their gambling debts. That's what we're here against, and that's why we're taking a stand for freedom of speech, because they're going after the movement and anyone who stands against the imperialists, because they know we're a real threat and that's rising. They know we authentically represent the American people. They know that the American people are ready for a change and ready for an end to the wars. And that's why